was really excited. Heidi was the first person we asked to speak, and I was really excited when she said yes, because I think her experience encapsulates really what we're trying to help people learn how to do with Everywhere, which is you have experience both on the local, like taking one event and making it much bigger than what it could have otherwise been, and then taking it beyond that and scaling that to a pretty large scale of 70 plus cities, thousands of events, and these aren't small events. I'll let you talk a little bit about specifically what they're like, but I actually painted in a couple of them, which was a really cool experience. And they're multidisciplinary events that encapsulate fashion and dancing and music and sometimes comedy and visual arts and costume design and painting and jewelry. It is so cool. And so, for, I don't know, the average one is probably a couple hundreds of people, maybe even thousands of attendees, depending on what city it's in.
It ranged, but our average was anywhere from 800 to 2,500 people.
Oh, that's even more than I thought. Okay, cool.
Depending on the city and the population. We certainly didn't start that way, but that was, toward 2009, right before COVID, right? At the peak of everything, or 2019 rather, that was the average.
Awesome, attendance. So really, it's one thing to scale a bunch of events across 70 locations at all, but then to do it at scale events that are that scale across that many locations is really impressive. If you want to learn about the background of how she started that business, we have a podcast on the Event Promoter Podcast where we talked in depth about that. We'll touch on it really briefly here, but if you want to hear kind of that whole story, the thing we're going to focus on in this talk is really what it was like to scale that. Both, I think it'll be interesting to learn a little bit about the operations of scaling it, but also the marketing as well, how you built the brand and how you kind of built up new cities when you would launch in those cities. But before I go way down that tangent, I'm just going to give you a chance to introduce yourself a little bit more specifically than I just did.
Okay. Well, my name is Heidi Luerra. I founded Raw Artists. Some of you guys might be familiar. If you're local, we did have a showcase in Omaha for a very long time. I founded the company when I was 24 from my kitchen table with $0 in the middle of a recession. And the impetus from that, like I said, is fully downloaded on the podcast, but the Cliff Note version is I started as a fashion designer and was looking for a place to showcase my work alongside my creative friends who are also musicians and artists and performers. And this predates social media, or MySpace was around back then, but we weren't using it in the way that it's used now. So the only real option was IRL. And so I took matters into my own hands when I was 20, and I had to get a fake ID to go to the first venue that I hosted my event in, and I threw a fashion, music, and art show for myself and my creative friends. We all pitched in a little bit of money to do that, and I directed it. I showcased my clothing line at the time. It was kind of an accident that I fell into this. Like I said, I was a fashion designer, but I found this gaping hole in the creative community where people wanted to gather and be seen and heard. And so people started coming to me in droves after that saying, when is the next one? I didn't have a next one planned. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm exhausted. I just directed this and showed my line. So then Raw Artists was born in 2009, and my idea was to syndicate it to as many cities as possible. I wanted to see what the art was like in New York and what the fashion was like in Florida. And we really did that through proprietary technology that we built in our team. We used Eventbrite for about, I think, a year, and then we were like, screw this. We're going to build our own. So we built a planning, production, and promotion software that also has a full ticketing suite, and that, I will say, is the crux of how we were able to scale, but we can get into more details, too. There's lots of other aspects.
Yeah, sure. I'm interested, at what scale you built that. At what point were you like, oh, I mean, you said a year, but how many cities or how many events were you doing already at that point?
We launched in 2009. In 2010, toward the end of 2010, early 2011, we were in 17 cities across the United States. The way that we did that initially was we hired independent contractors all over the United States in those key cities that we wanted to launch in. And I mean, we barely had a website at this point. So it was kind of, we chose crazy people off of Craigslist that wanted to take this gamble with us. And we basically said, hey, you buy your ticket to come out to California. We will put you up in a nice hotel and feed you for 4 days. And we will teach you how to throw this in your city. And then we will help you get your venue in your city. We'll negotiate all those contracts, and we'll kind of act like a parent company, essentially. But you'll be pretty independent, and they did well for themselves. We wanted boots on the ground in each of those individual cities because we thought that was really important, especially as we're starting. We didn't want to haphazardly go into Omaha or, Orlando and pretend like we knew the landscape. We did take initial steps, though, to have networking events in each of those cities prior to launching, and we had our directors at the time invite different people that they knew in the creative community. And we actually did a tour. We called it Raw Across America. We rented a van. We wrapped it in our logo. We got a sponsor that made 0 cents, but probably just felt sorry for us. It was a software sponsor. and so in the middle of winter, too, by the way, snowstorm after snowstorm, we drove to all of those 17 cities, and we had little pop-up networking events where we said, hey, Raw's coming to your city soon, and here's what we're about. Here's a t-shirt, here's a sticker, tell your friends. And I think that created a lot of goodwill. I mean, it was expensive, but I think it was worth it for introducing ourselves in the community. As we grew, we couldn't do that every time, but we had kind of grown a reputation for ourselves as well. So word spread.
I think that I hadn't heard the thing about doing the networking events. That's an interesting way to kind of start to build some community before you try to do the big event,
Yeah.
That's an interesting way to do that.
We filmed a really embarrassing documentary about it, too, on YouTube.
Oh, okay, nice.
Interested?
I think I've actually seen those videos. I just never clicked on them, so I didn't know what they were.
I don't know why I just said that.
I'm going to go watch them now.
Don't look.
I'm going to do it. So what was like some of the, you kind of touched on some of those there, but were there any other surprising challenges, or I guess, challenges that were really difficult to overcome scaling from, maybe even from there, like you said at some point you couldn't do those anymore. So like from 17 to 50 cities, what were some of the break points where you're like, oh, this is like, now we're in a new territory where things that were working before are not working anymore?
Yeah, we used to have those independent contractors in each of the cities that ran it, that ran their individual shows. And we found, and many of you guys that have events in different locations have probably found that the operator and whomever is on the ground can make or break your show and your reputation in that location. After a good handful of instances where people were kind of, for all intents and purposes, ruining it for us, I finally was like, that's it. We're going all in. We're getting an office in downtown LA. We are moving our most key, directors here, and we're gonna do whatever we have to do this the right way with people in front of us. And so that kind of was a trade-off, because we no longer had necessarily boots on the ground and directors in each of those locations, but we were able to control our quality a lot more, control the processes, control what they were saying to the artists that they were booking into the showcase, have just more oversight and create systems and best practices around that. So then we decided to have our hub in downtown LA and then fly our showcase directors out to each of these locations when the shows happen. Now, we still had a local team of a videographer, a photographer. We had our local host and our PAs. So we still had some boots on the ground that we could do things with. But we had a really kind of like logistical nightmare schedule of trying to make all of that still balance both the mission and the money, because we all know if you can't fuel your shows with money, they're not going to last very long, right? There's not going to be a lot of impact. So we had this insane schedule for our directors where they would run a showcase a month, but they started far enough out that they would go to a walkthrough of their venue in one city, From that walkthrough, they would fly to the next city, produce the event, and it was like within the same week. It was insane. Without going too much into the weeds, we decided to bring our directors in-house. That was one very big pivot. And then eventually, so we kind of had a hybrid outside directors and inside directors, and then we went all inside, and that pissed off some of our outside directors. So it was just, but it was a really good decision. It was an expensive decision. I learned very much the hard way how to be a boss really quick, because I was managing all these remote people, and then suddenly they're in front of my face and they want benefits and they want 401ks and they want medical insurance, and so that was its own learning curve.
I mean, that's really an interesting challenge and way to solve it. Also, I can only imagine. I remember the director of the Pittsburgh show that I did first, and she seemed like she was very busy.
Yes,
but she also seemed like she was having a lot of fun. So I'm sure it could burn people out, but I'm sure it was also really rewarding for the people who had the flexibility in their lives to be able to do that.
Yeah, it took a very specific and special type of person, which I would guess everyone in this room is, to work in events, to be creative. You have to think on your feet. You have to, in our case, have an eye and ear for great talent, know how to talk to them and nurture that relationship. So I think that was a difficulty too, is finding the perfect person to do that thing and do it well.
Do you have any tips on finding, I feel like there's a thread, there's a couple things that everyone that's talked about scaling their events and or scaling their marketing, two of the most important things is maintaining quality of the content, which I have some questions on that, and then there's the, which some of that is through playbooks and processes, yes. Which, everyone at a single event stage probably is playbooks, but once it definitely breaks, once you get to a certain point where you're we need playbooks, and it literally will not work without that. And then there's also you need great people that are your boots on the ground. With Brian, it's their trivia hosts, and with you, it's these local directors that you're flying all over. Do you have any tips on this? How do you think about hiring people that are that kind of special breed, and how do you tell in an interview if someone is going to be cut out for that kind of work?
Oh, goodness gracious. I wish I knew the answer to that perfectly, because it would have saved me a lot of time. I think it is, unfortunately, trial and error with hiring. I have noticed a trend that whenever I was hiring, either at the corporate level, for our team, that was more kind of running the base camp, to the directors, it takes about maybe 2 or 3 people per role, going through them, unfortunately, before you realize even what you're looking for and need. But going back to how, I think there's hiring, but then there's being ready for that person, right? And making sure that they are set up for success. So that is definitely where the playbooks come in. I wrote a handbook that was a 77-page handbook that broke down, if they would just follow it, they would be successful every time. So it was not only hiring the right person, but making sure they had the right tools. And so if you have a great person, but you don't have structure for them, you're probably going to lose them. So I wrote the handbook, I had tools, and then part of that kind of turned into our technology over time, because that was necessary. I mean, any given time out of our US office, we were producing 12 shows a month. That was pretty average. Each of those showcases had anywhere from 80 to 100 different types of performing artists, visual artists, etc. So if you walked into one of our events, you're going to see a pop-up art gallery, you're going to see 2 to 3 live music acts, you're going to see 7 to 10 fashion shows that all have models, right? Then there's hair and makeup, then we have vendors. So the logistical nightmare that I wanted to create was just that. And so in order to have order, we really did have to have as much structure as possible. The artist brought the creative beauty to everything, right? And they brought the chaos, but we needed to organize them pre, during, and post event in order for it to work for everyone.
Yeah. Artists need someone else to be their structure. I understand, I think, how you started to build the brand of Raw early on when you were able to do those networking events to kind of start building it before you would launch in a city. Once you were bigger and you were launching a new city, what did you do to kind of set up that first show in a new city for success?
Yeah, Facebook groups were very helpful. Introducing ourselves in those Facebook groups, having the director go in there and introducing themselves. If we could have a mixer prior, that was our best practice, but it wasn't always feasible. Involving the venue, we did have a partnership with Live Nation, so sometimes they would, I don't know, introduce us to key people in the area, so it helps to have those type of collaborative partners. But on a more logistical note, like we were in not only the US, but Canada, Australia, and Mexico, and the bigger we got, the more we got into the compliance side. Like, there are different taxes in different places. There are, in Montreal, for instance, you have to print all of your promotional material in both French and English. It is illegal if you put a poster up that doesn't have French. We're like, okay, that's double the promotional costs, right? And then every province in Canada has a different tax rate, and some of them have entertainment taxes and some of them don't. And so it's like more money, more problems, more cities, more problems. There's just more to constantly get through. So as we went internationally, it was a matter of, okay, have our CPA and our attorney go and find an attorney and a CPA in that other country and have everyone talk for a very expensive 4-hour phone call and figure out how to translate these two lands and how we can even work here.
Yeah.
That was step one as we got older, like grew to different countries.
And how were you both mostly opening in cities where you felt like there was a draw there because there was social media followers there or something already, or artists that were interested in being in the shows? I'm assuming that's probably how.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like, you'd just be standing up something that was just totally in a vacuum.
We kind of had a rule that if they had an NBA team, we would go.
Omaha would fail that.
Well, yeah, and then we would meet people that are like, well, I live in Austin now, but I'm from Omaha, and there's a great, art scene there, whatever. So we'd catch wind of this. We had just like natural network effects built into our model, because the more shows we would have, the more attendees we would have, the more people would talk about it. Opportunities and leads, I guess, on a city came out of the woodwork all the time.
Yeah.
But definitely we looked at like colleges. Anywhere where there was a big college, we knew there was young people creating, most likely. There's obviously like large cities have artistic, reputations. But we also found that like in large cities, you are competing with everything, right? There's anything to do on a Monday through Sunday. In Boise, Idaho, we're on the front page of the newspaper, right? Because it's like, Raw is coming to town. So I think there's benefits to both. So while we initially went for like the major metros, we found that we had a very warm welcome in a lot of smaller communities, because we were unique and we were kind of giving a platform to people that didn't have a lot of that were in their backyard.
Well, and you also did a really interesting thing in the artists, by combining so many different art forms together and having so many different artists all at once in you kind of have a built-in promotion network.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, we were and are a crowd-funded event. So our artists, their skin in the game was to sell 20 tickets. So we didn't have a booth fee. We didn't take a commission on anything they sold at the event. We didn't track any of that. The haters will call it pay to play, but I call it a creative way for people to actually join together and be stronger. You can't rent the live, the House of Blues as one artist and be seen on that stage, but several artists coming together and pitching in, just like I did with my friends when I was throwing my first show. That really was the impetus. Went further, and we all got to cross-pollinate our networks, and when there's 80 to 100 artists in there is crazy connections that happen, and people get picked up by boutiques and people get signed to labels. Like, you don't know who's in the crowd when there's 1,000, 15, I like to call it invisible value, right? You don't know what's going to happen, and that's the beauty of live events. But yeah, we were crowdfunded. And so that was the very nature of how we grew so quickly and how word spread, is because every person that was participating had to, get 20 people at least for them to not pay anything out of pocket. But at the same time, we didn't arrive at that easily. We tried it free. We tried to work out a back-end deal with the venue where we would earn a percentage of bar sales. No one came because the artists were like, I don't have to do any work.
Yeah.
I'm just going to show up.
I'm sure anyone who promotes like concerts it's so frustrating when you're like, hey, artists, could you post this show on your social media,
you're going to
please?
be here. Yeah, we tried that too. We were like, okay, well, instead of that, why don't we do a promotional package? So it's like, okay, if you're booked in the show, your skin in the game, so you have to post X amount of times prior. You can't have a show 2 months prior. Like, all of your fan base has to be built up for this. That didn't work either. And so we arrived at this through trial and error. We're like, okay, screw it. Everyone has to have skin in the game because this is too capital intensive up front for us as a company to do this for everyone. Like, we have a very altruistic mission, but if we're going to make an impact, we also have to make money to make that impact. And, it was really difficult for a lot of years. It took us about 7 years to become a profitable company. And that's a long time, to wait for that to happen.
What were you doing in
yourself.
Between to make money?
Well, we were making money. We're just investing it back in.
Yeah.
And as the CEO, I had to skip paychecks. I had to do a lot of things to sacrifice and keep it going. But that's just the nature of building something that didn't exist before. We didn't get a playbook ourselves or a blueprint, or there wasn't a like company who had done this before that I could copy. We had to just figure it out. And I cared that much to keep going.
Yeah, to keep going, yeah.
Yeah.
What's, we're going to open up to Q&A here in a second, but what's some advice you have if someone has an event format that's working maybe locally, or maybe they're already in a bunch of locations, but they want to either make those events bigger or they want to take that format and scale it further. Do you have any advice to someone like that of like how to think about that?
Yeah, you have to document all of your systems. Whatever is currently working, document that as well as you can to a T. Do try and hire the very best person to represent you in whatever location you're going to, because that is going to be key to your success or failure. Giving them as much tools and technology as possible to make their job easy. I would say, you have to replicate the system, but in a new form. And one thing that I definitely learned through the process is we would have a showcase director, for instance, in one city who would do a fantastic job. And we would ask them what their best practices were. Like, what are you doing differently? Walk me through your process, and we would document those things. On the flip side, you'd sometimes have a director do a really terrible job and get complaints. We also tracked NPS, Net Promoter Score, per location, and then we would collate those and look at them as a whole. So it wasn't ever necessarily the showcase or the brand or something we were doing, but it was rather the director operating it that made or broke it. So I would say, like, having not only the materials to help that person succeed, but also the materials to measure how that's succeeding or not, and iterating as much as you possibly can from what you learn. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does, yeah. All right, we're going to do Q&A now. If anyone has any questions for Heidi, Andrew's going to slowly walk over here, and then he'll walk over to you.
So it seems like you wear many hats. Since you do, how do you manage your time with all of the events you have going on and all of the kind of logistic chaos that you have going on?
Yes, so on a personal note, at this point in my career, so Ra's now 16 years old, and earlier this year, I exited as the CEO. So I'm still the founder, of course, but I have another CEO who is running Ra. Ra also pivoted after COVID, like many events did and have, to more of a licensing model. So now independent producers host our events under our trademark, and they use our proprietary technology. So my job has gotten a lot easier over time. But the way that I would say Raw manages its events are really our technology. Like, we have a full planning, promotion, and production software that has a full ticketing suite that we built from scratch. And that allows everything from pre-populated promotional materials to the second someone is booked into our CRM, they get all the information they need, they get their immediate ticket link, etc. So it saves a lot of time, and that has been the reason we've been able to scale to the level that we have. Then I have lots of personal processes because I'm obsessed with like organization and efficiency, but I'll spare those for that happy hour in case you're interested.
Okay, I have kind of a similar question, but I guess more so during like your journey of building the business, when you were like wearing all of those hats, how did you juggle like expanding the business and taking on new opportunities, but also like managing the capacity of the current team that you had?
Great question. I didn't sleep a lot, I can tell you that. Lots of coffee. No, literally, I block schedule. So I guess we are getting into my personal organization. So during the day, for that 8 hours while my staff was there, that's what I was focused on. But growth stuff I would do after hours. So that's when everything quieted down, everyone left, everyone stopped asking me questions, and I could focus. So, and also because we had Australia and at one point we got really close to launching in Japan. They're on different time zones. So if I was going to meet with those people and talk to them, I had to do it at night anyway. So that's when I would train our international people over Skype, back when Skype was a thing. That's when I would like get all of my kind of growth material. So I had to kind of compartmentalize it because it's like a machine. It's like a beast that you're feeding on a 9-to-5 basis every day. And then it's like, how do you have to grow while you're doing that. So yeah, that's how I did it.
As you were growing your company, what was the biggest way to pitch to investors to believe in your mission and your view? Because like you mentioned, the van, software company kind of thing. So what was the best kind of practices to really pitch your idea to those investors?
Oh my God, that's a really funny story how that software company. Do you guys really want to hear that? So we actually were 100% bootstrapped. We never had outside investors or venture capitalists. We made a little bit of money, invested it back, made a little money, invested it back, and it was just a flywheel of money, and sometimes taking on debt to get past hard seasons or when we were investing in growing something bigger. As far as the one sponsor we did have a few paid sponsors here and there, but it wasn't anything that like moved the needle. They like would sponsor a show or two, and a lot of times it was like gifting free things or a couple $1,000s. It didn't really move the needle for the business, and I decided early on, I was like, this is so much work because we have all these deliverables we have to give this sponsor. It's just not worth it. I'd rather put my time into promoting the show and doing a better job for our artists. But how to pitch yourself to those people, I think you, one, have to understand who you're talking to and what's going to be in it for them. You always have to look at the other side and have empathy for, is this going to make sense for this person? Like, why are they going to take money out of their pocket and give it to me? What value am I going to bring it? If you can approach it from that side, I think you have an easier time, pitching yourself to that person. But for that one sponsor, he gave us $11,000 to get across the United States. And full disclosure, it was because we used to smoke cigarettes outside of the office together for months. And I had no idea that he was the CEO of this software company within the building. No idea. Like months and months and months go by. And one day he's like, aren't you supposed to be on a trip around the nation? I was like, oh, we haven't been able to raise enough funding to go. He's like, come to my office on Monday, pitch me. And I was like, and he gave me his card, CEO of this. I was like, oh my God, who? Again, he felt sorry for us, for sure. That was how that happened. But I'll never forget that. That allowed us to do our trip, and I think made a huge difference for our community. So smoke cigarettes, everyone. It's really good for connecting with people.
as an artist yourself, how did you balance being an artist and making your own work and feeling fulfilled with that, but also the many, many hours that went into the business and logistics and the growing an organization? I bet a lot of people in this room are creatives themselves, which is a different kind of fulfillment than you get from your day-to-day business. So how did you balance that? Did you balance that? What do you do now?
Good question. So yeah, I think I'm innately creative. That's just my nature. And if I'm not putting it into, for instance, designing or drawing something or painting, we were just talking about this before, I think business actually is really creative, and it is a creative outlet for me, even though I'm not like making something like of beauty that somebody else can enjoy. I like spreadsheets. I know that sounds funny, but I like building a beautiful spreadsheet. And growing a business and creating something, you are constantly solving problems. And I think creative people are really great at business because we see things a different way. And we're able to look and be resourceful with different tools and resources that are around us. So I think creativity has morphed over time for me. Now I still derive a lot of creative outlet from for instance, I make my kids' Halloween costumes every year, and my own Halloween costume for the last 20 years. I still find ways to create things. I just maybe am not doing it outwardly, in a showcase setting. But I think business is very creative, and again, the more creative you have, the more of that creativity bone that you have, the better you are at it, and the faster you can move, I think.
Heidi, that was incredible. Thank you for sharing your insights. I was just curious, you mentioned something about kind of pushing your artists, just reminding them that they have to promote the event too.
Yes.
I was just curious with how they responded to that, because I think it should be very obvious that they would need to do that. And I'm just giving you an example. We provided, beautiful verbiage, marketing materials, and they still didn't promote it, and it kind of got me in a mindset of we got to set up a agreement almost, if we put this work to promote this thing that you're a part of. And I'm just curious how you
held them to it.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think the monetary aspect where, our tickets were $20 to $25 depending on the city. And we said, you have to sell 20 tickets to have your slot. If you don't sell them, that's fine, but you have to pay the difference. There had to be some skin in the game. Now, everyone and their mom and every advisor always said to me, why don't you have a contract or an agreement or something in place? Because we never did. And we thought long and hard about it. We definitely had terms and conditions, but we left that out because contracts scare artists. That's at least what I learned. And there was going to be more back and forth over that contract than was worth. So we instead were like, if this is unpaid before the door, we gave them, that's what we did. We had a 7-day deadline before the event. So we said, you have a week prior, that is your cutoff date, which really was 48 hours before. So we would extend it for them if they were having trouble. So we gave them kind of an artificial deadline so that they would work towards that, and the studious ones would, and they would hit that, no problem. But then if people were having trouble and they were actively trying to promote and you could see it, and we would be like, okay, you have a couple more days, right? So that allowed us to be the hero and just help them out a little bit, because we really just want it before the doors open, right? Just please commit to that. If they got to that point and they couldn't pull it off, which most of them could, 98% of them could, then we would say, I'm sorry, you can't set up, we can refund your guests, or we'll reach out to your guests for you, and we will tell them they can still attend the event. There's obviously 75 other artists here, if they want to, or we can transfer your tickets to the next show and you can try again. So those were our tactics for doing that. We had showcases typically on a quarterly basis in all of our cities, our major cities. So that was a benefit if an artist couldn't get across the finish line. But it is really hard, and it is a balancing act between money and mission, and it's not for the faint of heart, right? Because we had a very altruistic mission that we were trying to accomplish. So we want to help artists. We want them to be seen. But the reality is they're not going to survive very long in their artist career if they can't promote themselves, if they can't get out there and make themselves seen and heard on their own. Like, you got to kind of let them struggle through it because it's imperative. And a lot of artists, too, would come back to us after, and they were like, man, I was so apprehensive about selling those tickets, but I learned so much about myself. Thank you. I'm like, can I get you to make a video saying that?
I literally made a video on YouTube that had a ton
He
of
did.
views.
That's how we met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being like, I think this is not a, because some people, you know, would really push, artists would really push back and be like, is this a scam? Like,
Oh,
is
yeah,
raw
I
artist
should have
a
mentioned
scam?
that, yeah.
And it's like, no, if I go to another show or I go to another market, I have to pay $250, $300, $500 just to like set up. And then sometimes they, on top of that, take a cut of everything I sell.
Yeah.
So like the fact that I have to sell 20 tickets is like really not that big of an ask. So yeah, I made a video. It was like, this was my experience. And I sold way more than what it cost me to be in the show, which I think I sold all the tickets anyway. But the, yeah, you know,
Yeah.
and it really did, it is like a nice, I needed that. Even as an artist who was a little business savvy, I still having that like deadline and like this is like the objective number right here, like made it a little bit easier to make it happen.
Yeah, that's actually how Craig and I met, is he posted a YouTube video that was borderline critical, perhaps, maybe, a little.
No, but I may have clickbaited people into thinking it was going to be critical.
I think he clickbaited.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. But I was like, I saw it. My team brought it to me. They're like, look at this guy. No more talking. Blah blah blah. I was like, oh, and this is actually pretty good because he's like breaking it down for people that don't understand the business of doing an event. And so I commented on it, and I was like, hey, thanks for your comments here.
Yeah.
And that's how we met each other. Isn't that
Yeah.
so funny?
Like 10 years ago.
Yeah, 10 years ago. But yes, we did get a lot of scam, pay to play, that whole narrative. And that, you know, this was my baby. So that hurt because I'm like, I'm trying to do something good here. Like, I'm sacrificing everything to do this because I believe in this so much and I think it's so cool and special. But yeah, you just get that. Like, that is kind of par for the course when you're working with the creative community. A lot of people will think anything that costs them money or time is, you know, they need to be sometime, not everyone. Again, it's like a very vocal minority that feels that way. And of course, they're the loudest online, which is annoying. But for the most part, I think the people that got it really benefited a lot from it in multiple ways. And we had so many artists recurring, and we used to have a promotional program where if you did one show in your local city, you could do another one out of state with no charge, so you could go see another city and tour. So we did a lot of cool things, and I think we made a lot of impact in people's lives. But it definitely comes with its haters, and that's just kind of part of the situation.
I feel like it's hard to get to that scale of anything and not, I mean, even artists have it. When an artist gets famous, then a lot of their old fans are like, oh, you've changed so much, and, you know, whatever. So, yeah, you're right, the vocal minority,
Yeah.
and social media gives them like such a big.
Yeah,
you
we
know.
had, and I'm sure we screwed up too. I'm not saying we're perfect, but
Yeah.
I mean, we had 200,000 artists in our network that have showcased with us. We've done over 2,000 live events in 70 cities. We've had over 1 million attendees, and I think over 600,000 artists applied to be a part of our showcases. So it's like, of course, there's going to be
Yeah.
like a percentage that doesn't
mean,
like us for whatever reason.
I do
or-
think that was like, you know, that was and continues to live on as quite an impact. So with that, thank you, Heidi, for
Thank
sharing
you.
all your insights with us.